Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we're going to talk about staff turnover, what's considered healthy, what's not, and why you should be concerned about it. So without further ado, let's hop right in. Hey leaders, I'm your coach Adam, here to have an honest talk about leadership, the obstacles you might face, and how to refine your leadership skills to help you become the leader I know you are. So let's grab a drink, sit back, relax, and have a chat. Staff turnover. I love talking about staff turnover. I love looking at staff turnover. I love analyzing it because staff turnover can tell you a lot about an organization. It can tell you how they see themselves, where they're going into the future, and if they'll even succeed. It's a phenomenal indicator of how well an organization is doing. I remember working with one organization, and when I was working with this organization, the leadership would say things about their staff turnover. They would say things such as, "This job isn't for everybody. It takes a special type of person to work here. You either make it or you quit. It's a real trial by fire." The thing about these comments is these comments are really there to justify high staff turnover. See, within this organization, they were suffering about 70% staff turnover on all the new hires that they had. And when we looked at their organization as a whole, 1 year, they suffered about 60 to 70% turnover within their entire organization. And yet, they kept saying things like, "This is just a hard job. Not everyone can do it." The great irony of it was that this organization was consumed with money, finances, and expenses, and yet they failed to understand that they were hemorrhaging hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year to staff turnover. It blew my mind. I remember talking to a gentleman in sales. He was a manager, and his organization was concerned with selling cars. Sell. They were worried about the bottom line. They always had to be in the black, never in the red, and yet they could barely hold on to their employees. When you looked at it, you just started doing simple math on this, and they were hemorrhaging, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to staff turnover. For an organization so consumed with their bottom line, they couldn't understand that they were losing money on their staff turnover, but they accepted it as if it was normal. When the reality is that if they wanted to make bank, if they wanted to take their organizations to the next level, they need to rein that turnover in. So let's get started in talking about why is turnover so costly to an organization? When somebody decides to leave, there's two costs associated with that. There's tangible costs, and then there's going to be intangible costs. When we start by looking at the tangible costs, it will cost you about 50% of that position's salary to replace the worker. Let me repeat that. It's going to cost you about 50% of their salary just to replace that worker. The more technical, the more experienced and specialized this position becomes, the more the costs balloon, and they can balloon up to 250%. It is insane. An example of this is a receptionist job here in Alberta, on average, costs about $36,000 a year. To replace this position, at minimum, it's going to cost you about $18,000. When all is said and done, when we've done the hiring process, when we've done the training, when we've got them up to speed, it's going to have cost our company $18,000 on top of the $36,000. I know what you're thinking. Where does this money go? See, the money's hidden from you. It's hidden from sight. It's wrapped up in HR processing the termination of the previous employee. It's wrapped up in somebody had to create the job posting. If you're paying somebody $36 an hour and it takes 2 hours to complete a job posting, that's $72 right there, just creating the job posting. Then you're going to have to post this job posting on message boards, on job posting boards. Usually this is not free. The job posting board will request that you pay them. Sometimes it's just $100. Again, now we're at $172. People are going to submit their resumes to your organization. Somebody has to process them. Usually it's HR. They're paid hourly. Again, the costs are going to start ramping up. Once HR has approved those resumes, they're then going to go to the manager. The manager then has to sift through all those resumes. You're paying this manager per hour. You are paying them to look at these resumes. Once management has decided on the people to bring in to interview, depending on the interview style, you may have one manager or many in a room. Each interview will take you roughly an hour to do, plus deliberations at the end. Again, you are paying people hourly. I remember going in for a nursing interview, and there were about 5 to 6 managers in this interview grilling me with questions. I started doing the math. It was costing the organization about $200 an hour just to interview me. It was insane. You times that by how many applicants you are doing, and again, we're already starting to get into the thousands of dollars. Once we've decided on the applicant, we have to pay somebody to do the reference checks on them. Then we have to pay somebody to do the offer letter. We have to get that signed. Somebody has to be paid to actually process that paperwork. This is excluding any bonuses that you have for that individual. Now, once they're on board, they are now going to be training with an orientation buddy. You are paying for their training. In most settings, you have classroom work attached to their training. You're now paying for the overhead of the classroom, the electricity, you're paying for the space, you're paying for an instructor. Again, these costs start ballooning out of control. We're just talking the monetary cost. We're not talking about the loss of productivity. See, when you are training somebody, training is a full-time gig. As a trainer or an educator, you are busy training this individual. Your output, what you normally do, will naturally decrease. I know every time I took on a new nurse, I became 50% more inefficient at the minimum. This is why we have teachers. All a teacher's job is to train a student for their future. McDonald's has crew trainers. In the Army, they have drill instructors. What are these people's job? Well, they're to train and educate these individuals. This is a full-time gig. It is insane. the amount of money that it costs just to train somebody. Then we start getting into the more intangible costs. This is the decreased worker output. You're down a team member, which means that you have lost 8 hours of work. It's going to take your new person approximately a year to 2 years to become efficient and have the same worker output as the worker that they just replaced. This isn't to mention that the workload is still going to be there. The work is now passed off to the remaining team members, which means that your staff are now at an increased risk of burning out. If you don't handle this situation carefully, you can watch your team get completely gutted. Not to mention, you're going to have decreased engagement and worker output from the rest of your team as they start grieving the loss of their team member. And if there's high enough staff turnover, they're going to start thinking to themselves, why should I work hard at this job? This job is kind of shit. And then you're going to start experiencing quiet quitting. And this isn't to mention the real issue of brain drain. Brain drain is when your talented, educated individuals leave an organization. I remember seeing an organization that got gutted. They lost about 90 to 95% of their team. They had to build the entire team back up from the ground. The problem is that when you have team members leave, they take all of their knowledge and talents with them. They took all of the knowledge about how the organization worked, functioned, and all the little intricacies of the system with them when they walked out the door. This caused an interesting effect where the workers didn't know how to navigate the system. They didn't understand how certain things worked. At one of my nursing jobs, the entire nursing department quit, and they took all of their knowledge with them. I remember coming in and trying to pick up the slack and looking at processes, procedures, and forms and scratching my head over them, thinking to myself, I don't know why we have this. I understand we have this for a reason. We have this procedure for a reason. I know it's important for us to have this procedure, but I don't understand how this procedure works with our system. It was a lot like playing archaeologist, just trying to figure out how the system was actually supposed to work, which again reduced the output of the organization. We want to keep our staff. We want to keep our talent. The cost of losing our people is incredibly high. Your biggest overhead will be your people. We need to keep this low. We need to keep our talent. But when we think about staff turnover, we actually don't want 0% staff turnover, because that means we have people there that should be moving on, that need to leave this job for some reason. Maybe they become disillusioned, disgruntled. They just need to move on. When we look at organizations, a healthy staff turnover is about 10%. That's what we're aiming for. That encompasses people leaving because of family reasons, moving away to a different country, retirement, moving on with their career, etc. we want to aim for about 10% staff turnover, and that is considered healthy. Something to remember and just be aware of, though, is sometimes when we look at an organization, overall, we can have 10% staff turnover. But when we dive into the organization, we may notice certain departments have a 90% staff turnover. That's not okay. A good rule of thumb is if you start seeing about 40 to 50% turnover rate, you have a problem. You have a big problem within the organization you need to fix. If you have a staff turnover rate of about 90%, you have incompetency within your leadership ranks that you need to get rid of. You either need to retrain these people or help them move off the bus because they have done something horrifically awful that has gutted your entire organization and has now cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is unacceptable. Everybody deserves a good leader. And if you cannot be a good leader for whatever reason, it is your obligation to step down. As leaders, we change people's lives. We impact people's careers. If we cannot rise to the challenge to be the leader our people need, we need to step down. The question now becomes, how do we keep our people? This is a multi-tiered answer that we're going to have individual podcasts about. The first one is we need to hire the right people off the get-go. If we're going to be spending $18,000 to train somebody, we need to know that they're worthwhile in training. The next stage is we need to create a robust training program for our people. We need to set them up for success, not failure. From day one, we need to help them become amazing team members, not just let them flounder on their own. From there, we need to start looking at making sure our team members have their coffee breaks, have their lunch breaks, have access to washrooms. I know this sounds crazy, but there are many organizations that don't even allow our team members to do the basic bodily functions. Our people need rest. We need to make sure they're taking time to take care of themselves. We need to have an employee retention program built into our organization. Pensions, health insurance, dental insurance, eye insurance. We need to have long-term retirement plans for our people. We need to have upwards mobility, a plan for individuals that wish to retrain. When we look at places like Chick-fil-A, they understand that this job is a stopgap for most people. And so they have an employee retention program in place that says, hey, you can go back to school and get retrained. We will pay for a portion of it. We want you to stay and work for us while you're in school getting your new training. The goal of this is to retain your employee for as long as possible. We need to be respecting our people. We need to help them recognize that they're doing good work. We need to do positive reinforcement. We need to help them become the best version that they can be. We need to challenge our people. We need to help push their boundaries, but not too hard, just enough to keep them motivated and engaged. And we need to be able to sit down with them and understand where they want to go in life and how we can help them get to that next level. Another thing we need to look at is, are we doing exit interviews? Are the questions on that exit interview worthwhile? Exit interviews have fallen by the wayside, but are a fabulous, fabulous tool to help you understand what's actually going on within your organization. These people are quitting. They don't give two shits about leaving a good impression with you. They will tell you how it is. If you have a psychopath within your midst and there's bullying and harassment, that's going to come out during the exit interview. And this is where you start seeing the patterns of toxicity at the workplace, so you can start stamping it out and making sure your people stay. And the last point that we're going to talk about today is we need to do team building. I know a lot of organizations don't want to do that, but here's the thing. People want to be a part of a group. They want to be a part of a tribe. They want to be a part of a community. We as leaders have to offer the opportunity to be a part of a group, to be a part of our team. If our people don't feel like they belong, if they feel like they're siloed and isolated, they're just going to move on. It's just another job. But if we bring them on board, if we make them feel like they are a part of something bigger, we're going to help retain them. This is a bit of a meatier podcast, but I hope it is helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at amelnick@seatingthelead.com. Otherwise, I shall see you in the next episode. Cheers. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, give it a like, and share it with a friend. And if you're ready to take the next leap and improve your leadership skills, head over to www.seatingthelead.com and book your free coaching session today.